putting things off till never. Or in other words, working and working and working, and then realizing at the end of the day or at the end of my life that none of it matters. And I never got to live the life that I somehow imagined came after all the hard work because I put off the things that really make a wonderful life and really make a difference and really matter because I had to work. You're listening to The Creative Imposter, episode number 79. Welcome to The Creative Imposter. I'm Andrea Klunder, and today I'm going to do something very unoriginal. I'm going to copy one of my clients, Sarah Buino from Conversations with a Wounded Healer, who copied another podcast that I had not heard of from WNYC Studios called 10 Things That Scare Me. Okay, it's not really cool to call Sarah out and say that she copied. Let's say inspired by. It's a top 10 list. It's not rocket science. But for some reason, when I was editing Sarah's episode of Conversations with a Wounded Healer, which you can find wherever you're listening to this podcast, and which I will link to in the show notes for this episode, it really struck me. Like, deep. It's a 5-minute episode. Mine will be longer than 5 minutes because I'm super long-winded. But those 5 minutes of Sarah's episode really made me think. And of course, I had not heard of that podcast, so I did go check it out. And it's fascinating. Each episode is literally one person recording a list of 10 things that scare them, sometimes with explanation, sometimes without. And I think the reason why this really hit me, as you know, this current flow of The Creative Imposter, I wanted to focus on imposter syndrome and creativity as relates to who you are, your identity, rather than what you do. And for many of us, I feel like these two things are very inextricably interwoven and connected. And in some cases, I think that becomes problematic. I know, at least in my life, having an attachment to thinking of who I am or defining who I am by what I do or create causes a whole bunch of problems. And when the things that I do get waylaid by something like a major health event, then it puts things in even more perspective. And so if you had asked me to make a list of 10 things that scare me prior to what has been happening with me and my health and my body, I think it would have looked a lot different than the list that I have for you today. Because over the last few months, I have learned a lot about myself and my tolerances for things, and, well, I think you'll see what I mean. One thing that has always scared me, and I don't know why, because it's not like I come into contact with them on a regular basis, is big cats, like jungle cats, like tigers and leopards and pumas and panthers. I have recurring nightmares about being stalked or eaten or attacked by them. I cannot even go into the lion house at the Lincoln Park Zoo without my heart starting to beat out of my chest. I just can't. Number 2, something that has been slowly creeping up on me over the years that I can't really even allow myself to think too much about because it will take me on a downward spiral, is ruining the planet. Ruining the planet. When I think about trash and waste and the landfill problem, when I think about our food supply and how contaminated and modified it is, and all of the allergies and resistances that we're developing to food because our body can't molecularly recognize it anymore. When I think about the water supply and the privatization of water and Nestle and the air quality, and I imagine a dystopian future where if you don't have your own personal respirator and oxygen mask, you will die because you cannot breathe the air that we live in. Yeah. That's the downward spiral. Number 3, cancer. I mean, obviously, who wouldn't be scared of cancer, except that I wasn't. I wasn't, because it had nothing to do with me. Like, other people get cancer, not me. So when I received a diagnosis of, and forgive me for saying this, but not even real cancer, but pre-cancer, as it is often described, stage 0. The heck is stage 0? Not that I want a different stage, but stage 0 DCIS, ductal carcinoma in situ. At the age of 40, I'm like, what? This can't even be happening to me. Total denial. It's completely out of sync with who I think I am as a person. I am not a person who has cancer. But now, even post-surgery, which surgery was my full treatment plan, there was no systemic treatment required, no chemo, no radiation, nothing like that. So I consider myself very fortunate in that regard. There's still a fear of, but what if it comes back on the other side and it's worse? What if it shows up somewhere else in my body? I mean, if stuff was going down in there without me knowing it once, it could happen again. And maybe next time it will be worse. Number 4, very related, health insurance. More specifically, losing health insurance or lack of health insurance or inappropriate coverage. Again, I have been very fortunate by the coverage that I have. I never checked for like cancer treatment coverage because, again, see number 3, that's not something I have to worry about. I have been very fortunate to receive top-notch health care from a quality facility, but every time I go, I expect them to say that I owe. And I expect it to be a dollar amount that I can't afford. Every time I receive an envelope in the mail from my insurance company, I expect to open it with a bill for a dollar amount that I cannot pay, even though those envelopes are just statements confirming the fact that a procedure or a test or a visit that I have already had has been approved for coverage. I cannot even begin to imagine the stress that somebody in my position with worse coverage or no coverage at all might be feeling. Oh, and not to mention the fact that if and when I need to switch coverage or get a new plan or policy, what about this whole pre-existing condition thing? How is that going to work? Number 5, I am scared that my body will never feel right again, that it will never feel like my body. In some ways, post-surgery, and I had really 2 surgeries in one, abdominal surgery and breast surgery, as they took tissue from my abdomen for the reconstruction of my breast, which I was like, oh, that's like the most natural way to do it, is to take your own tissue and transplant it. It sucks in a lot of ways. It's a sucky procedure. And there are areas of my body that I cannot feel sensation-wise. There are areas of my body that still hurt 7 weeks out. I cannot lift my left arm straight up, not even close. I got like a 90-degree angle going, a right angle. I look like a cactus. I cannot lift certain things. I cannot use my core muscles. I can barely sit up when I've been lying flat. My body feels very uneven. Certain things still feel swollen. I am scared that my body will never feel like me again. I'm scared of permanently losing mobility, and I am scared that the pain that I have, though not consistently, but very frequently, will be with me forever. Number 6, I have a fear of hurting someone deeply without ever meaning to, or without realizing it, or without even remembering what I did. Not too long ago, my younger sister was relating a story to me from our childhood of something that she remembers very clearly, of a promise that I made and did not fulfill, that has stuck with her for, since the late 90s. And I have zero recollection of it. I think sometimes I'm so up in my head that I'm not always aware of how what I do or say, or more often don't do or don't say, affects someone else. Number 7, putting things off till never. Or in other words, working and working and working, and then realizing at the end of the day or at the end of my life that none of it matters. And I never got to live the life that I somehow imagined came after all the hard work, because I put off the things that really make a wonderful life and really make a difference and really matter because I had to work. Number 8, running out of money. It has happened to me. I had to close a business because of it. I had to borrow money from my own PayPal account because of it. I had to file bankruptcy because of it. And you would think that because of all of that, because I survived, because I'm still here, because I'm digging my way out of it, that shouldn't scare me anymore because I've been there and I was resourceful and I survived. However, it scares the shit out of me. Number 9. This is a pretty complicated scenario because it's not just one thing. It's like a whole bunch of things mashed together in my mind that I can see playing out, which is getting old, becoming feeble, being dependent on others, and being completely alone. This happens every time I see someone who is quite advanced in age getting on the CTA, specifically getting on the public bus and slowly making their way up, slowly taking out their transit card and swiping. And then they take one step down the center of the aisle of the bus toward a seat, and that bus driver has already taken off, and said person is like flying. I mean, that happens to me, and I'm 40. And I had a moment of feeling this way on one of my first outings post-surgery. I went on a field trip with my high school students. We went downtown, and I had not been doing as much walking as was required on that field trip, but we had to take the public bus downtown, and we had to walk a little over half a mile to get to our destination, walk around our destination, and then walk a little over half a mile back to the bus stop. And on the last leg of that trip, I was worn out. I was hunched over. My back was killing me. And to get to the bus stop, we had to cross Michigan Avenue, which is a very busy downtown street with lots of lanes of traffic. And we have those crosswalk signals where there's a little greenish guy who says walk, and then there's the red hand that says don't walk. And of course, flashing red hand means it's almost time to not be in the street because the cars are going to come get you. What we also have is a countdown. So what that means at this particular corner is that the light turns to the greenish person crossing the street, and then immediately a split second later starts the flashing red hand countdown and shows 25 seconds on the clock. 25 seconds, plenty of time to cross the street, right? Nope. I was crossing the street as fast as my achy back, weak core, tired self could possibly get me across the street. And halfway across the street, I was like, I am not going to make it. And when that clock hit 0 and the solid red hand was there, time to not be in the street, I still had one whole lane of traffic to cross. And well, I mean, obviously, if someone's in the street, the cars aren't going to go, right? Not necessarily so. You could get someone whipping around from the back who's impatient and doesn't see that there's someone in the crosswalk. You could get somebody who's looking at their cell phone and they look up just in time to see the light turn green and not actually look at what's in front of them. You could get people honking at you thinking, like, you're young, you don't have a cane, you don't have a walker, why are you dilly-dallying in the street? Trust me, people, it is not a fun place to be. Number 10. This is a big one. Losing my voice. And I lose my voice a lot. It's a hazard of being in this industry, but I do. In the wintertime, I lose my voice a lot. I get laryngitis. It sucks. And every time I temporarily lose my voice to laryngitis, I have a fear that it won't come back, that I will never regain my ability to speak or to sing or to podcast. And related to that is also a fear of losing my ability to hear, because that also affects my speech and my voice and my singing. And this fear became very apparent to me when I listened to an episode a while back of Invisibilia that I am definitely going to link to in the show notes for this episode. But it was a story of a woman who had a major medical event, unexpected, out of the blue, in which she did lose her ability to speak. It wasn't so much her voice, it was just her ability to formulate words. And she set out on a very long, difficult journey to rehabilitate herself. And I won't tell you any more than that because I really want you to go back and listen to the episode. It was one that I was casually listening to as I was walking to my weekly co-working group one morning, and it took me totally by surprise with a deep emotional hit that kind of threw me off kilter, I'm not going to lie. So a very good listen, maybe not one to do when you're on your way to something else. All right, that's it, my top 10 list. I am curious to hear what you would put on your list. And I invite you to share all or some of your own list in video form, in audio form, in picture form, in text form, whatever form speaks to you, over in the Creative Imposter community on Facebook. You can find that linked in the show notes for this episode, or go to thecreativeimposter.com/FB, request to join if you're not already in there, and go ahead and share your list of things that scare you. Special, special, special gratitude to Sarah Buino of Conversations with a Wounded Healer for bringing this thing to my attention, and to WNYC Studios and everyone behind 10 Things That Scare Me. Check out both podcasts. You won't regret it. I thank you so much for listening. And this week, I am wishing you the space to admit that sometimes you're scared.